The expensive black sedan rolled to a stop just before sunrise, but the man who stepped out was no longer dressed like one of the wealthiest CEOs in America. Instead of an Italian suit, he wore faded blue jeans, worn-out work boots, a plain delivery company jacket, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. No one would have recognized Jonathan Carter, the billionaire founder of one of the fastest-growing logistics companies in the United States. For years, he had believed the glowing reports handed to him by executives who insisted that every employee was treated like family. Yet anonymous letters had recently appeared on his desk, each one describing fear, humiliation, and suffering inside the very company he had built. Refusing to trust polished presentations anymore, Jonathan decided to uncover the truth himself by disguising himself as a temporary delivery driver at one of the company's largest distribution centers in Columbus, Ohio. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who loves emotional stories, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps us continue bringing heartfelt stories that inspire millions around the world. Jonathan had built Carter Express from a tiny warehouse with only one truck and a dream. Back then, he knew every employee by name and personally helped load packages late into the night. Success had arrived faster than anyone imagined, but with growth came layers of management that slowly built invisible walls between him and the people who kept the company alive. As he walked through the warehouse carrying heavy boxes alongside strangers, no one treated him like the owner. He became just another new driver trying to survive his first shift. For the first time in years, he saw exhausted workers skipping breakfast because they could not afford cafeteria prices. He noticed broken equipment that managers had promised was already replaced. Most painfully, he saw tired faces that no longer carried the pride he remembered from the company's early days. Among those workers was a kind-hearted dispatcher named Rebecca Collins, a widowed mother raising 2 young sons after losing her husband to cancer. Every morning, she greeted nervous new employees with a smile, quietly helping them understand routes and paperwork even though she received no extra pay for doing so. Jonathan watched how Rebecca constantly encouraged others while hiding her own struggles behind tired eyes. She worked double shifts, rushed home to care for her children, then returned before dawn to do it all over again. Her strength reminded Jonathan of his own mother, who had worked multiple jobs to keep food on the table when he was a child. The real shock came during lunch. Jonathan sat quietly at a corner table pretending to read delivery schedules, while several senior supervisors gathered nearby. They assumed the new driver was too insignificant to notice them. Their conversation slowly revealed a heartbreaking reality. They laughed about denying overtime payments by altering electronic records. They joked about replacing older workers before retirement benefits became too expensive. One supervisor proudly admitted that complaints sent directly to the CEO's office never reached Jonathan because his assistants automatically forwarded them back to management. Every word felt like another knife in Jonathan's heart. The company he had sacrificed everything to build had become a place where greed flourished while compassion disappeared. The conversation became even darker when Rebecca's name came up. The supervisors mocked her for requesting flexible scheduling after her youngest son was hospitalized with severe asthma. Instead of helping her, they planned to write her up for missing impossible productivity targets. One manager coldly remarked that struggling single parents were easy to replace because desperation forced them to accept unfair treatment. Jonathan lowered his head to hide the anger burning across his face. Every instinct told him to reveal his identity immediately, but he forced himself to remain silent. He needed to understand how deep the corruption truly reached. Over the following days, Jonathan continued delivering packages across neighborhoods throughout Ohio. He met elderly customers who praised individual drivers while criticizing delayed deliveries caused by unrealistic schedules. He watched employees risk injuries because supervisors refused to slow impossible workloads. He shared coffee breaks with workers who quietly admitted they had once loved working for Carter Express, but now dreaded every morning. The stories were painfully consistent. The problem was never the hardworking employees. It was a leadership culture built on fear instead of respect. Rebecca unknowingly became Jonathan's greatest teacher. Despite everything she endured, she never allowed bitterness to define her. When another new employee accidentally loaded an entire truck incorrectly, Rebecca stayed 2 unpaid hours after her shift to help reorganize every package. She never sought recognition. She simply believed that helping others was the right thing to do. Jonathan realized that people like Rebecca had been carrying the company's values long after its executives had forgotten them. On Jonathan's final undercover day, disaster struck. A violent thunderstorm swept across the city as delivery trucks rushed to complete their routes. One inexperienced driver lost control of his vehicle after faulty brakes failed on a flooded road. Several employees immediately ran into dangerous conditions to rescue him before emergency crews arrived. Jonathan joined them without hesitation. So did Rebecca, who ignored the pouring rain despite having already finished her shift. Together they pulled the frightened driver to safety moments before the damaged truck caught fire. Watching ordinary employees risk their lives for one another while executives obsessed over profits changed Jonathan forever. The following Monday, every worker was ordered into the warehouse for an emergency meeting. Rumors spread quickly. Some feared massive layoffs, while others expected another lecture about productivity. The room fell completely silent when Jonathan walked onto the stage, wearing his tailored business suit instead of the delivery uniform. Faces filled with confusion slowly turned into complete disbelief. Rebecca stared in shock as she recognized the quiet driver she had encouraged every morning. Jonathan spent nearly an hour revealing everything he had witnessed. He spoke about unpaid overtime, manipulated records, broken equipment, ignored safety concerns, and cruel treatment toward hardworking employees. Every dishonest supervisor involved was immediately terminated following an independent investigation that confirmed Jonathan's findings. Human resources leadership was completely replaced. Anonymous reporting systems were redesigned to reach Jonathan directly. Lost overtime wages were repaid with interest. Safety improvements began that very afternoon, and every employee received expanded healthcare benefits along with paid family leave. When Jonathan finally turned toward Rebecca, the entire warehouse grew silent again. He thanked her for protecting the company's soul when those in power had abandoned it. Instead of offering a flashy reward, he promoted her to director of employee care, creating an entirely new department focused on supporting workers and ensuring every voice would always be heard. Tears filled Rebecca's eyes as hundreds of coworkers stood and applauded the woman who had quietly carried hope through the darkest days. Months later, Carter Express looked completely different. Employee satisfaction reached record highs. Customer trust returned stronger than ever. Profits increased not because workers were pushed harder, but because they finally felt respected. Jonathan visited warehouses regularly without announcing his arrival, never forgetting the lessons he learned while wearing a simple delivery jacket. He realized that true leadership was never measured by the size of an office or the number of people giving reports. It was measured by the willingness to listen to those whose voices were easiest to ignore. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends and family, and help us spread more stories that remind the world that compassion still matters. Before you go, please leave a comment answering this question. If you were Jonathan, what would you have done after hearing that conversation in the break room? Jonathan often said that the greatest delivery he ever made was not a package but a promise that no employee would ever again feel invisible inside the company they helped build. Sometimes the strongest leaders are the ones willing to walk unnoticed among ordinary people, because only then can they truly hear the voices that need them most. And sometimes, one act of kindness from a single person like Rebecca is enough to transform an entire company and remind the world that respect, honesty, and compassion will always be the greatest success of all. If you'd like, I can also create the SEO title, description, tags, hashtags, and disclaimer for this story.